3 days after Hazel moved out, I found 2 toothbrushes in the bathroom. Not hers, she took hers. That was the first thing she grabbed. She left behind the fridge magnets, the rice cooker, even her favorite scarf. But not the toothbrush. So imagine my confusion when I walked in and saw one brush in the holder like always, and a second one. Blue. New. Wet. I live alone. No guests. No cleaners. No keys given out. And still there it was. I stood there staring at it, trying to calculate the odds that I'd somehow hallucinated a toothbrush into existence. My brain did the mental gymnastics. Maybe it was hers. Maybe she bought a new one. Maybe she came back while I was asleep. But the door lock was untouched. Alarm system off. No sign of entry. Nothing. That's how this all began. Not with a confession, not with a text, not even with her walking out the door. It began with a toothbrush that didn't belong and a gut feeling that wouldn't leave. Let me rewind, but only a little. Hazel and I had been divorced officially for 10 years. But the truth is, she left me a year before that. Quietly. Gradually. Like air escaping a balloon. She stopped responding with full sentences. She started taking calls outside. Then one day she said she was staying at her sister's for a reset. That reset lasted 364 days. And on the 365th, I got the divorce papers in a manila envelope with no return address. I signed. No lawyer. No reply. Just silence. I spent the next decade forgetting. Or trying to. Until the toothbrush. After that, little things kept happening. A spoon in the sink that I hadn't used. An email in my drafts I didn't write. A pair of earrings on my nightstand, Hazel's. But not the ones she wore when she left. Ones I'd never seen before. And then the worst one. An Uber driver called me to say he was outside. I hadn't ordered one. He insisted I had. Said he even spoke to me on the app. Said I sounded rushed. The destination was the town Hazel grew up in, 130 miles away. At first I thought I was losing my mind. I even checked myself in for a sleep study. They said I wasn't sleepwalking. My brain was just under chronic stress, whatever that means. But then, a few nights later, I came home from work, and my bedroom door was locked from the inside. Let me be clear, I don't even have a lock on that door. That's when I decided to dig. Not emotionally. I'd done enough of that in therapy. I mean dig for evidence. Old files, bank records, browser history, anything Hazel might have touched in the months before she left. Anything that would explain why, 10 years later, it felt like she never really left. And what I found was a name I'd never seen before, linked to her Venmo, her old email, even a shared Dropbox I didn't know we had. A name she sent money to every month, even after the divorce. Someone with no social media, no phone number, just a single shared document titled Phase 3, Activation After Disappearance. That's where this story really begins. And if you think I'm crazy now, wait until you hear what was in that file. I stared at the file name for a full 5 minutes before I opened it. Phase 3, Activation After Disappearance. It sounded like something out of a spy thriller, which made it all the more absurd. Hazel wasn't a spy. She was a therapist. A real one, with books about childhood trauma stacked up to the ceiling and a soft spot for stray cats. She used to cry during documentaries about endangered species. The woman I married once apologized to a spider she trapped under a cup. She didn't activate phases. She didn't disappear. At least, not like this. The document was plain. No formatting, no colors. Just black Arial text on a white background. But the content? It was anything but plain. It was written like a checklist. 12 bullet points. No headers, no names, no explanations. Just actions. Numbered, cold, methodical. Create exit narrative, emotional instability, plausible dissatisfaction. Remove digital footprint incrementally. Start with photos, then logs. Establish banking bridge via third-party Venmo shells. Plant secondary items in cohabiting space to erode reality. X. Toothbrush, earrings. Redirect suspicion using non-confrontational exits. Phase 3 initiation occurs after 9-year dormancy. Watch for behavioral regression in Subject A. Reintroduce artifacts progressively. Emails, clothing, food scent triggers. Gauge reaction. Log it. Do not interfere. If Subject A reaches Stage 5 emotional decline, proceed with Directive 4C. Destroy this document. Begin observation cycle. Subject A. That was me, right? I read the list again, my hands starting to shake. I couldn't breathe. It felt like my lungs had been vacuum sealed. None of this made sense. Not unless I was part of something I didn't know I'd joined. Not unless Hazel had been playing me for a lot longer than I ever realized. I closed the file and backed out of the Dropbox. For a moment, I wondered if I should go to the police. But what would I even say? Hi. Yes, I think my ex-wife psychologically staged my reality like a Netflix miniseries. No chance. But that night, I couldn't sleep. Not even close. I laid in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking back on the things I'd dismissed. The plan in the office that used to face east, but somehow started facing west. The emails that disappeared from my inbox. The time I swore I heard breathing outside the door at 2:13 a.m., but found nothing. How many of those were real, and how many were planted? And that's when the music started. Old jazz. From the hallway. I don't listen to jazz. Hazel did. I got out of bed slowly, heart pounding like a damn bass drum, and cracked the door open. The light in the hallway was off, but the sound was unmistakable, soft static, then Ella Fitzgerald singing something slow and ghostly through what sounded like a warped record player. I followed the noise barefoot, one step at a time, to the end of the hall. No speaker, no device, just the guest room door cracked open 2 inches. A room that hadn't been touched in months. I pushed it open. There was nothing inside, at first. Just as I was about to step away, I noticed it. A single red post-it note stuck to the baseboard near the floor. I peeled it off. One word, all caps, blocky handwriting that wasn't hers. Soon, that's when I started to think this wasn't just about Hazel anymore. Maybe it never was. And maybe, just maybe, I was never the main character in this story. I didn't sleep that night. Not even a little. I sat in my living room with every light on, hoodie up, hands shaking, staring at that red post-it like it might start speaking. I don't know what I expected to happen. A knock on the door? A masked figure on the lawn? Maybe Hazel herself, with that same half-smile she used to give me when I burned the rice or forgot to feed her plants. But no one came. Instead, at 4:17 a.m., I got a voicemail. No ring. No missed call. Just a blinking notification and a timestamp. I didn't recognize the number. It was a string of zeros, not blocked, not private, just zero. Like a placeholder, like something out of a movie that was too lazy to give its villain an actual name. I pressed play. Static. Muffled breath. Then Hazel's voice. Quiet. Flat. Devoid of warmth. If you're hearing this, it means the cycle has started. I'm sorry, Micah. I wanted to leave you out of this. But you noticed the toothbrush. You always notice the wrong thing. Don't try to trace this. Don't go looking. Whatever you think you're remembering, you're not. That wasn't your memory. And then silence. Not even a click. I dropped the phone. Just dropped it on the floor like it was hot. My hands were clammy, my pulse buzzing in my ears. I wanted to vomit. But more than anything, I wanted to understand what the hell she meant by, that wasn't your memory. Because I did remember. I remembered everything. Our wedding. Her graduation. Our arguments. The time we lost our cat and found it hiding in the water heater cabinet 2 days later. I remembered crying on our kitchen floor the day she walked out. Those were my memories, weren't they? The next day, I did something I hadn't done in 10 years. I drove to Hazel's hometown. It was a small, nameless-feeling place. The kind where every house looks like it came with instructions. The kind where people still hang flags on their porches and mow their lawns in diagonal lines like it means something. She used to talk about how suffocating it was. How she felt like the mailboxes were watching her. I always thought that was metaphorical. Now I wasn't so sure. I didn't go to her childhood home. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I went to the local library. It was the only place I could think of that might hold clues without triggering whatever Directive 4C was in that file I found. I didn't even know what I was looking for. Just something. A name. A pattern. Proof that I wasn't unraveling. I asked the librarian, an elderly woman with a nose that looked permanently wrinkled, if they had yearbooks from the early 2000s. She raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. Small towns don't thrive on curiosity. She led me to a back shelf, dustier than the rest, and left me alone. Hazel's high school yearbook was easy to find. What wasn't easy was finding her in it. She wasn't there. Not under Hazel. Not under her maiden name. Not in the class photos. Not in the extracurriculars. Not in the index. Nowhere. I flipped to the staff pages, thinking maybe her name had been misspelled or misplaced, but nothing. It was like she'd never gone there at all. But here's the thing. I'd seen photos from her senior prom. I remember her showing me one. She wore a red dress, hair up, glitter on her eyelids. I remember thinking how completely different she looked, like another version of herself had been pasted over the one I knew. I asked where the photo was taken, and she said, "Somewhere I never want to return." So if she wasn't in the yearbook, where was that picture from? I searched the library archives next. Old microfilm, newsletters, anything. After an hour, I found one local paper clipping from 2005. It was a blurry black and white photo of the high school prom court. The caption listed 6 names. Hazel's wasn't one of them, but she was in the photo. Barely. 5th from the left. Faded, grainy, half her face turned toward the camera. And standing directly behind her, mostly obscured by a shadow, was a man. Tall, pale, wearing what looked like a name tag. His face had been scratched out, like physically damaged on the photo itself. Not by age, not by accident. Deliberately scraped with something sharp. Written in pen under the photo, in shaky handwriting. He was not supposed to be there. I put the microfilm down and sat very still for a long time. Hazel hadn't just left me. She had erased herself. And now I was beginning to wonder if I was supposed to disappear next. I left the library that day feeling like I'd opened a door I wasn't supposed to find, much less walk through. I couldn't stop thinking about that scratched-out face in the prom photo. Who does that? Who takes the time to dig into a strip of film with a blade or a nail just to obliterate one face? And only one. And why was Hazel in the photo, but not in the yearbook? Nothing made sense. Nothing added up. Except the fear. That part was starting to feel very real. Still, something inside me wouldn't let it go. Call it obsession, call it madness, call it trauma. I don't know. But I needed more. I needed to talk to someone who knew her back then, someone who remembered her, who could confirm that Hazel really lived in that town, went to that school, existed in the same world I did. So I found a local Facebook group for that high school's graduating class and sent out a fake message pretending to be a reunion planner. I asked for memories, photos, anything they had from prom night 2005. It didn't take long for someone to reply. Her name was Lana R. And her profile picture was one of those grainy vacation selfies older people post when they think they've nailed the lighting. I messaged her privately, and to my surprise, she responded within 5 minutes. I remember Hazel. But back then she went by a different name. You didn't hear that from me. I stared at the screen. Different name? What name? She sent a follow-up message almost immediately. Her name was Holly back then. Holly Rain. Real quiet. Real intense. Didn't talk much, but always watching. I remember once during gym she just collapsed. Middle of a volleyball game. Everyone said it was heat stroke, but she didn't even fall right. Didn't try to catch herself. Just let herself hit the ground like she was shutting down on purpose. Like someone flipped a switch. I asked her for proof. Anything. A photo, a note, a yearbook quote. She sent me a scan of an old yearbook page, the same yearbook I'd looked at in the library. But this version had a student listed as Holly Rain. Her photo wasn't the same one I remembered Hazel showing me years ago. It was different. Same face, yes, but younger, harder, almost vacant. But here's what sent ice through my spine. Next to her name, under the senior superlatives section, someone had handwritten a sentence in ink so faded it looked like it had tried to erase itself. She's not one of us. I asked Lana who wrote that. She replied with, "That was the year we started locking the library doors after dark." I pressed further, trying to get her on a call, but she refused. Said it brought back bad energy. Said she had already said too much. I pushed once more, and she sent one final message. "You really shouldn't go looking for her. People disappear that way." Then she blocked me. I sat in my car in the parking lot behind the library for what felt like hours, watching as the sun dipped below the horizon and the shadows started getting longer. The town didn't feel small anymore. It felt empty, like a hollow shell of itself, like something had chewed through the core of it and left the buildings standing just so no one would notice. I drove back home that night with the windows down, trying to keep myself tethered to something real. The cold air helped. Music didn't. Every station I flipped to was static. Not just weak signal, full static. No reception, no playlists, not even emergency broadcasts. It was like I'd been tuned out of the frequency of the world. When I finally got home, the lights in my apartment were on. I never leave the lights on. I stepped inside carefully, keys between my fingers, holding my breath like that might stop time from moving forward. Nothing looked touched. Nothing was stolen. But the moment I turned toward the kitchen, I saw it. A bowl of soup, still warm, steam rising off the surface in gentle curls. And next to it, neatly folded, was Hazel's favorite sweater. I hadn't seen that thing in 10 years. I don't remember how long I stood there. Maybe 10 seconds. Maybe an hour. But eventually, I worked up the courage to touch the sweater. It was real. Still smelled like that perfume she used to wear. The one with the stupid name I could never remember. And the soup? It was exactly how she used to make it when I got sick. Split pea, no carrots, extra garlic. But I'd been perfectly healthy. I checked the locks. Nothing forced. Alarm still armed. And that's when I realized something else. The old answering machine light was blinking. I didn't even know it worked anymore. One new message. Date stamp, 2005. Time, 2:13 a.m. The same time I'd heard breathing outside my door weeks ago. I pressed play. It was Hazel's voice. Younger. Clear. But her tone, it wasn't like I remembered. There was no softness, no emotion. Just a calm, robotic cadence. Cycle verified. Subject A has returned to source. Phase 4 pending. Click. That's when I finally understood. This wasn't a haunting. This was a program. And someone, or something, was running it again. I didn't leave the house for 3 days. Not because I was scared, exactly. Though fear had become something ambient by then, like a ceiling fan I couldn't shut off, but because I had to convince myself I hadn't lost it. That the soup, the sweater, the voicemail from 2005, that it wasn't some elaborate mental breakdown or stress-induced delusion. I needed proof. Tangible, logical proof that reality was slipping at the seams, not just me. So I did what I always do when I'm on the edge. I journaled. I opened a fresh notebook, wrote down everything from day one. The toothbrush, the Venmo records, the red post-it, the voice message, Lana's yearbook scan, the prom photo, the soup, the machine. All of it. And the more I wrote, the more it felt like trying to summarize a dream I couldn't fully remember. Every page made sense when I read it in isolation, but side by side, it was like I was describing different lives, different versions of the same events. Same characters, but their roles kept changing. Sometimes Hazel was my wife. Sometimes she felt like a stranger I'd been told I married. And then something happened that nearly broke me. I looked out my kitchen window just before dusk on day 4. I remember this clearly because I had just microwaved the soup Hazel had left and had one spoonful before throwing it away in a panic, and I saw a man standing at the edge of the property. Not moving, just standing. He wasn't looking at the house. He was facing the trees, perfectly still. I watched him for 10 minutes. Never shifted weight, never scratched his head or checked a phone. Just stood there, arms at his sides, like a statue. I thought maybe I was being paranoid, but then I noticed his wristwatch. He raised his hand at one point, adjusting the sleeve of his coat, and I saw the face of the watch. The numbers were backward, not like a mirror, not flipped, reversed, inverted, in a way that didn't make any logical sense. I don't even know how to describe it. It was like the watch wasn't meant to be read by humans. I blinked, and in the next second, he was gone. I ran outside, checked the grass, the road, the tree line. Nothing. But there were footprints in the soil. Deep ones. 12 sets. All perfectly spaced apart, like he had walked there with surgical precision and never once turned around. Later that night, I dug back into the Dropbox Hazel had forgotten to delete. I started combing through deleted folders, thinking maybe something got overlooked. And that's when I found a zip file called Adler. It had been deleted, then restored, then renamed, then deleted again. I don't know how I managed to download it. Something kept triggering a network error like the file was rejecting being touched, but eventually I got it to open. Inside, a single text document, one image, and a 7-second video. I clicked the video first. It was blurry, black and white, filmed from a high angle, maybe a security camera. It showed Hazel, or Holly, or whoever she was, standing in the middle of an empty parking garage. She didn't move. She just stood there with her back to the camera. After 7 seconds, she turned her head slightly, not enough to see her face, but enough to know she was aware she was being watched, and then the video glitched. Froze on a single frame. I took a screenshot. When I zoomed in, I saw something in the reflection of the nearby car window, the same man with the reversed watch. The text document was just a list. Names, coordinates, date ranges, some crossed out, some underlined. All of it meaningless to me, except one name at the bottom. Micah Loren, 2031 to 2039, status, convergence initiated. My heart skipped. That was me, Micah Loren. And the years? 2031 to 2039? That was the future. We were in 2025. What the hell did convergence initiated mean? And then there was the photo. Just one. A picture of me and Hazel, but not from my memory. We were sitting at a table in a restaurant I've never been to. I was wearing a suit I don't own. My hair was shorter. Hazel looked the same, but her eyes were wrong. Too wide. Smiling too hard. I stared at the photo for a long time and realized something else. I wasn't blinking. Not in a frozen kind of way. In a posed way. As if I was trying not to blink. Like I knew the picture was being taken by someone who shouldn't have been there. Behind us, in the blurred background, was that same man. Same coat. Same stance. Same backward watch. I printed the photo. Pinned it to the wall next to the post-it note. And that's when I noticed something that made my stomach flip. The time on the backward watch in the photo was 2:13. That number again. The same time Hazel's voice was recorded on the answering machine. The same time I heard breathing outside my door. The same time every strange, unexplainable thing had happened. I decided then that I couldn't wait for the next phase to happen to me. I needed to find Hazel, or Holly, or whoever she really was. And the only person who might have answers was the one name that kept popping up in the hidden folders, tagged to every file Hazel had ever tried to encrypt. Adler. I expected Adler to be a person. A hacker maybe. An analyst. A shadowy figure pulling strings from some digital bunker, watching my every move through satellite feeds and microphones hidden in wall outlets. I'd built him up in my head. Trench coat, Russian accent, a scar under one eye. But when I finally tracked the name to something real, something physical, I realized I'd been wrong about everything. Adler wasn't a person. It was a building. More specifically, Adler Cognitive Research and Reintegration Clinic, nestled quietly in a dead corner of upstate New York, just off a road so narrow and unpaved I nearly popped a tire getting there. No website. No phone listing. No digital footprint beyond a decades-old zoning permit. The only reason I even found it was because I cross-referenced coordinates from the Dropbox file Hazel tried to delete. One of the entries next to my name, with old government infrastructure maps. And there it was, hidden behind the veil of medical research. Just a brick rectangle surrounded by pines. I almost didn't see it. The building looked wrong somehow, like it had been designed by someone who'd only ever seen blueprints in dreams. Too many windows on one side, none on the other. A front door so narrow I had to turn slightly to fit through. No signage, just a keypad and a buzzer that let out a mechanical wheeze when I pressed it. I told myself I was just going to look, just going to walk the perimeter, maybe peek inside. But when the door clicked open without anyone asking who I was, I stepped in. The air was cold, colder than outside. It smelled like old books and bleach and something else I couldn't name, something metallic and sharp and artificial, like the scent memory of blood long after it's been cleaned up. The lobby was empty. No receptionist. No cameras. Just a hallway stretching out in both directions, lit by flickering fluorescent panels. I chose left. I don't know why. Maybe I thought it would feel less ominous. It didn't. Room after room. All empty. Some had hospital beds. Others had tables covered in what looked like mind-mapping equipment, all abandoned mid-use. A pair of headphones still playing soft static. A notepad with a question scrawled on it repeatedly. Do you remember the order? I turned a corner and stopped. There was a wall covered in Polaroids. Hundreds. All the same size. None labeled. Faces. Some smiling. Some neutral. Some looking directly into the lens with eyes like glass. One of the photos was mine. I didn't recognize the setting. I looked older in it. By years, not months. Gray in my beard. A scar above my eyebrow I don't have. But it was me. No doubt. Wearing clothes I've never owned. Sitting in a chair I've never seen. Holding up a piece of paper that read, Subject A, 19. Final recall attempt. I backed away. That's when I heard footsteps. Not echoing. Not loud. Soft. Purposeful. Like someone walking in socks down a hospital corridor. I ducked into a side room. A supply closet, I think. And shut the door behind me. Held my breath. Waited. Listened. Nothing. Then the lights flickered. Just once. Long enough for me to catch my reflection in a small metal panel on the wall. And in that reflection, standing behind me, was Hazel. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking through me, as if trying to figure out which version of me had arrived. She wore the same clothes from the old photo, gray sweater, black slacks, bare feet. Her hair was shorter than I remembered, messy, eh? And her eyes were wrong again. Not inhuman, not glowing or monstrous, just like she'd forgotten how to use them. When I turned around, she was gone. But she'd left something on the floor. A paper, folded neatly, crisp, like it had just been printed. I opened it and read 5 words. You came back too early. Below that, coordinates. Different ones. A date, October 17th, 2023. And one final line. Cycle corrupted. Observe subject B instead. I stuffed the paper into my jacket and ran. Out of the building. Back to my car. Didn't look back. Didn't stop driving until I reached a gas station 2 towns away and sat shaking in the lot for 30 minutes with the engine still running. That night, I searched my memory for anything from October 17th, 2023. Nothing stood out. A Tuesday, I think. I had a dentist appointment. Grocery shopping. Hazel wasn't even on my radar then. So who was subject B? I checked the Dropbox again. No mention. No logs. But in one of the oldest folders, mislabeled as a tax document, was a video file I'd somehow missed before. It had no name, no date, just a black screen and audio. 2 voices. One male, one female, muffled, like recorded through a wall. But I could tell the woman was Hazel. The man? I couldn't be sure. But he was talking about me. Micah's pattern didn't hold. How early? 7 years. That shouldn't be possible. It wasn't. Until the shift. Then we watched subject B. I paused the file. There was one thing I knew for sure. Whoever subject B was, they were connected to Hazel, to the clinic, to whatever experiment or program or reality fracture had pulled me into this loop of broken time and vanishing truth. And I had a sick feeling that subject B might be someone I already knew. Someone I'd already forgotten once. The thing about memory is that we pretend it's a filing cabinet. We tell ourselves we can open the drawer, pull out the right folder, and find the exact moment in time we need. But it's not like that. Not even close. Memory is sand. And once someone else puts their hands in it, starts shaping it, scooping parts out, it's impossible to know what was really there to begin with. That's how it felt when I tried to remember October 17th, 2023. I sat in front of my computer all night, scanning bank records, emails, browser history, texts, anything to tether that day to something real. But every record I found felt planted. Like the receipts were too convenient. Like someone had gone back and staged a day in my life that never actually happened. According to my credit card, I bought socks. According to my Gmail, I confirmed a haircut. According to my calendar, I had a call with a recruiter that I have no memory of speaking to. And the weirdest part? According to my phone log, I received a voicemail at 2:13 a.m., but when I clicked to play it, the file glitched and crashed the app. Every single time. So I did something drastic. I went into my old, offline backups, clones of my hard drive from years ago, the kind you keep in dusty drawers and never really expect to use. It took hours to decrypt the folders and dig through system logs, but buried deep in a folder labeled Archive, Hazel, Personal, Discarded, I found a single TXT file with a name that made my blood run cold. Micah_B2_memory_log. TXT. The file was dated October 18th, 2023, the day after I supposedly did nothing out of the ordinary. I opened it, expecting maybe a draft of a note, a forgotten to-do list, some messy thoughts. But it wasn't that. It was a full narrative, written in my voice. The cadence, the phrasing, the exact way I overuse em-dashes and end sentences too abruptly. It was me. No question. But I don't remember writing it. The first line read, Memory destabilization began at approximately 2:13 a.m. Subject B, myself, experienced timeline bleed, aware of earlier version of Hazel before she was reintroduced. I stopped breathing. The rest of the file was long. Pages of fragmented experiences, none of which I remember. There were entries about voices in mirrors, seeing copies of myself walking down the street, missing hours that would reappear in dreams. There was even a reference to something called echo passage, which I have no memory of, but apparently triggered a full shutdown of my spatial awareness for 12 hours. One entry detailed me standing in front of my bathroom mirror, reaching toward it, and feeling another hand press back. But the last paragraph was the worst. It was short, Blunt. Like a summary after a breakdown. Confirmed. Subject B and Subject A are temporal splits of the same identity, fragmented by premature cycle engagement. Hazel knew. Hazel always knew. Observation ended when she said the words. You're not the first you. I shut the file. Sat back. Didn't move for a full minute. I wasn't just being watched. I wasn't just being studied. I was being rerun. Recycled. And that's when the lights in my apartment dimmed, and the air filled with that metallic scent again, like the Adler Clinic, like the inside of a locked memory. I turned toward the living room and saw her standing there. Hazel, but not the version I married. This Hazel was older. Her hair streaked with gray, her eyes lined with something far deeper than age, awareness. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just looked at me like I was a lab rat she'd raised from birth and finally let out of the cage. I told them you weren't ready, she said. Her voice was deeper, slower, like she was measuring each word. She walked toward me, not fast, not threatening, just steady, and sat on the arm of the couch, folding her hands in her lap like a therapist ready to deliver the hard truth. You activated too early. That was the problem. You saw what you weren't meant to see. That version of me. The notes. Adler. The mirrored bleed. Why? I asked, my throat raw. Why any of this? Because your mind doesn't stay put. Micah, she said, softly. You don't stick to the timeline. You never have. That's why the cycle keeps cracking. You deviate. You question. You're not even supposed to be here right now. Here where? I snapped. Here as in this room? This life? This year? Be specific. She looked at me, finally, fully. And in her expression, I saw something that broke me. Pity. This isn't your first run, she said. It's not even your third. I stepped back. I could feel myself shaking, not from fear now, but rage. What am I then? A test subject? A puppet? You're a variable, she said. And variables don't get answers. They just run. And with that, she stood up, walked to the door, and without touching the knob, opened it. Behind her, instead of the hallway of my apartment, was a corridor from the Adler Clinic. Same flickering lights. Same cold air. Before stepping through, she looked back one last time. I wish you'd never noticed the toothbrush, she said. It would have been easier. The door shut, and I was alone again. Except now I knew something I hadn't before. I hadn't been living my life. I'd been repeating it. And somewhere, buried in the noise and corruption and false timelines, was the original version of me, still intact, still whole, still screaming to be let out. I didn't leave the apartment for another 2 days. I barely ate. I barely moved. I stared at the door Hazel had disappeared through, half expecting it to blink back into a normal hallway, half expecting it to open again and pull me into a new cycle. It never did. There was no more static in the air, no more objects shifting, no more footsteps in the dark. Just silence. Like the program had finally powered down. But in that silence, something unexpected started to happen. I began to remember. Not just fragments. Not just dreams or glitchy déjà vu. Actual memories. I remembered walking into the Adler Clinic the first time. Not as a trespasser, as a participant. I remembered signing the waiver, the small cold room, Hazel's voice in my ear as she read from a script. I remembered her saying the phrase, cognitive echo repair test, phase 1. I remembered crying. I remembered her holding my hand and telling me, this will be the last time. After this, you'll feel whole again. I remembered why I signed up. I had been broken. It was years ago. I had lost someone. Not Hazel, someone before her. A sister. Younger. Smart. Warm. Gone too soon. A drunk driver. No warning. And afterward, I stopped sleeping. I stopped living. I stopped being able to process time correctly. I would forget hours. Relive days. Wake up in weeks I had already lived. Hazel wasn't my wife at first. She was my doctor. She'd created the Adler sequence to help people like me. People whose minds had fractured in ways language couldn't fix. People whose trauma had rewritten their perception of reality like malware. The goal wasn't to trap me. It was to guide me. I was never being manipulated. I was being treated. But I activated too early. Something in me kept skipping ahead. And every time I broke the loop, Hazel had to re-enter it. Restart it. Adjust. Reset. She wasn't my enemy. She was trying to help me remember the original version of me. And now, I finally had. So I made a decision. I went back to the clinic. Not to storm it. Not to escape it. But to finish the process. When I arrived, the building looked different. Brighter. Not warm, but not cold either. I stepped through the front door. No code, no resistance. The walls were no longer flickering. No dead-eyed portraits. No looping corridors. Just a single hallway that led to a glass room with one chair. Hazel was there. Not aged. Not glitched. Just her, the real her. The version who'd been guiding me this whole time. She smiled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I didn't feel watched. I felt seen. "You made it," she said. I nodded. "I remember everything now. I'm ready. You understand why we did this?" "I do." She gestured to the chair. "One final cycle. But this time, you write the code." I sat down. No straps. No wires. Just a screen in front of me. Blank. Waiting. She placed a hand on my shoulder. Gentle, steady. "You're not broken, Micah," she said. "You're just unfinished. Finish the story. Make it yours." I took a breath and closed my eyes. And when I opened them again, I was home. Not the apartment. Not a false loop. Home. Sunlight spilled through the windows. The air was quiet, calm. My memories didn't stutter. My hands didn't shake. The soup in the kitchen was warm because I had just made it. My calendar was blank because I had nothing to escape from anymore. I walked to the mirror and looked at myself. No distortions. No echoes. Just me. Whole. Free. Hazel was gone. Not vanished. Just released. She had done her part. The loops were over. The corrections complete. Now it was my life again. And for the first time in a decade, I wasn't afraid of remembering. I was ready to live.